Doug Ehrenberg.
Here.
Randy Yorkson.
Here.
Tony Byer.
Here.
Neil Lurkey.
Here.
Dan Cole.
Here.
Jim Stibbs.
Here.
Sandy Smith. Here.
And number 3 says we did what it says on the bottom. Number 4, finance operation and goal for 8 is 11-12 district audit review. Is that that say was done?
We talked to Jason this afternoon about tonight's event, and he told me he was number 1 on the list, and he was all right, great. But obviously he's not here yet.
Any objection to moving on?
Nope.
Okay, then we'll go to B, 12-13 budget development.
Okay, thank you. What we're going to do, what's that? Can we skip the C? Because you wanted to do audit review before the budget development? Are you the board comfortable with that, or want to?
Any objection to going to C?
No.
So we're going to see now?
It sounds like A and B are kind of tied together.
They are.
And we'd like to hear from A before we go to B. So C is a Fund 41?
Yep.
Is that in order?
That'll work. Just following up on our discussion from the September board meeting where we talked about potential allocation to Fund 41, looking at potentially increasing that allocation from $40,000, which was last year, to $100,000 this year, with the intent to start saving additional funds that have already been collected from our taxpayers, which are identified in Fund 10 to Fund 41. If there's any questions that are outside of what we've had prior, if more questions have come up, we'll gladly entertain that and engage the board's perspective. When we do get to the budget discussion, the budget does reflect $100,000 into Fund 41 for this year, but note that's the tentative budget. It can be changed if the board chooses not to go with that.
Is this something we're voting on next time?
What's that?
Is this something we're voting on next time?
It'll be voted on at the annual meeting.
Annual meeting?
Yeah, at the annual meeting.
The only question I have is, you look at the fund balance, which is $5 million.
Right.
So I was for this $100,000 put in there, but then if we have such a big fund balance, we need money. Put it on the fund balance.
Just pay for it at one time?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's my,
sure.
I thought it had something to do with another reason.
Brian, why don't you share again the concept of it? I mean, I
I
know
got your
that's,
concept.
The weekend before last, I was in Madison Friday and Saturday with a policy resolution committee for WASB. And this is in the discussion. WASB's going to put it to the membership in January, whether or not we should give our lobbyists marching orders to change legislation that allows Fund 41 to be on top of your revenue limits. That seems to be the consensus of the people down there. It is currently not, but the idea is that Fund 41, you could tax your revenue limits and then add additional taxes to Fund 41. And it was rather bluntly stated that it was a sneaky way to raise taxes without a referendum.
But that isn't true now.
It's not the current law, but it's what WASB's discussion at the resolution committee, the policy committee, was whether or not we should push for that change in legislation.
But if we do it now, we're not
Now it would,
playing the sneaky game.
No, but
It's a different way of doing it.
it's a Fund 41 that can, you can either put it in there out of fund balance or not. There are some benefits, I think, to taking it out of fund balance, because if you have too high a fund balance, it can affect some of your income revenue from the state. But Brian can probably answer that better than I can.
I think just, I was gonna bring this up at the budget. Because we put $100,000 in there last year that we didn't use.
we put 40,000
No, but I mean, then we designated out of the fund balance going to,
for the project,
for the project, and we didn't use it.
right?
So then we sit there with a big fund balance at the end of the year. So,
Brian, is there any perspective from your angle on that? I guess ultimately it's the board's decision. I know that we haven't utilized this or didn't implement to try and offset, the taxpayer, that we see it as a potential. Not every district can utilize this, depending on whether they're, the overall finance of that district.
And again, this fund is made up for negatively aided districts or property-rich districts. That's the only reason this this is here, what it's there is to spread out the cost for the taxpayers. So if we buy something that's $500,000, the $500,000 roof, the taxpayer is going to get hit really, really hard with that on that year that we pull it out of fund balance. This way, we could spread it over multiple years, however long we've been contributing. So if we've been contributing $100,000 for 5 years, then we spread that $500,000 out over the next 5 years. That's less of an impact on the taxpayer. That's the only reason why we're doing this, is because it keeps the mill rate down. If you guys want to switch to doing it out of fund balance, that's fine, but our mill rate's going to fluctuate then when we do huge projects.
Or huge projects could go to referendum.
Or they could go to referendum.
So it's either save some money as you go along, or whether you save it in Fund 10 or Fund 41 is really a wash, is it not?
No, because if you spend it out of Fund 10, then you're hitting the taxpayer all in that 1 year.
Okay.
So and since we're negatively aided, that's that $1.10 or whatever we said, so it's costing 10 cents more. But if we can spread that out over the year, we may be able to get it under that ceiling, so that we're not paying that extra 10 cents. Again, it's a tool to keep the mill rate down for a district like us.
Not all districts are in that situation.
No, like Manawa does not use this account because it would have no benefit for the district. And all it would do is
I
spread
don't
out
like
the.
sitting there with 57% of the budget sitting there. That's taxpayer money. That's just sitting. So that's the only reason.
Well, what does that have to do with the?
Well, you wouldn't have, you could take, they put this in the fund, in the budget this year, but we've got so much money sitting in that fund balance. I understand his point.
What?
You could lower, you could probably lower the levy if you took $100,000 out of it.
Not for this year, it's on the year that
Well,
when the activity, whenever you would spend it, you could potentially lower it from the overall cost. It would be paying, or levying on a percentage of the cost rather than the whole cost.
To me, a referendum, you're talking about, are you better off to save something if you're gonna put a big improvement in your house, or if you go to the bank and take out a loan?
We borrow from ourselves.
Well, that's what I mean.
$3 million sitting there, it really shouldn't be sitting there.
And you were
But
gonna
don't
make
you-
it broad enough that we could use it for all types of projects, so it doesn't have to sit there every year.
Capital accounts.
Yeah.
Right. You know, we've been talking about the roof projects that we've been engaged in, or future roof project, that's just one. If something would happen, some other physical component of this building, the board could act to utilize it right now, if it, with their discretion.
And it could be small. I mean, a broken window, $100, and it can go pay out of Fund 41. I mean, it's not just super, super large things. You know, some of the districts that have been doing it for a while use it as a budgeting tool too. If things pop up, they can pull it from Fund 41 and it won't have an effect on their general budget.
Okay, why don't we stew on that in a minute and go back to A? Is everybody okay with that?
Talk about it.
Now go back to A?
Yeah.
All right.
I'd like
4A
to,
is,
I'd like to introduce Jason Borath from Erickson and Associates. This is the second year presenting. Last year Jason was here to discuss the audit findings and results for the district. Erickson came in mid-August and took their initial data from our year-end results. And hopefully board members have had some time to look at, process the findings. And Dan, you touched base on a budget relationship, Fund 10 being at 50%. I'm sure no comment on that. The one item that I will comment on page 3 before we turn it over to Jason are just the financial highlights of the district. On the bullet points, the district overall financial status is reflected in total net assets. Saw an increase over this past year, and that's total net assets, $549,197. The general Fund 10 balance overall increase from $4,365,570, $5,025,157, and in relationship to our overall balance at the 57% Fund 10 relationship on our expenditures. The actual Fund 10 increase of this past year was aided by $659,587, and that's from various surpluses generated from our local budgets and from insurance throughout the We're there and well exceeding that at the current time. Some other highlights that we recognized the past year, partially self-funded insurance program continues to work for our district effectively. Brian's help, business administration component of our district is intact and working well with Manoa School District. With the board's direction and insight, we were able to put away monies and facilitate a roof project that was completed without going into or going to our taxpayers via referendum or exceeding the revenue limit. And last year, the board took the initiative to start a Fund 41 designation to look at future capital projects. So with that, Jason, feel free to give us your insight.
How's everybody doing this evening? What I do is we'll kind of go through, highlight some important points, answer all your questions, and we'll just kind of see where it takes us. Let's start on page 7 in the MD&A. There we'll see it's kind of our comparative changes in net assets. Last 2 years, the district's done well, very well. Well over $500,000 surpluses in both years. I'd like to point out here too, you'll see that your revenues actually dropped 10%, but your expenses dropped as well. So through careful budgeting and good fiscal management, we're still able to add to your surplus. And also because of that, and we've already kind of alluded to it, your fund balance is over 50%. And there's different schools of thought as far as how much you have, and that's really up to you as the board to decide, well, where do you feel comfortable at? Usually they say if you have between 15 and 20%, you're considered a healthy district. You guys are at 57. So what it does give you some options. We're kind of discussing those. Do you lower your levy? Do you do things? You have those options. Do you finance capital projects internally? Not a lot of districts have that opportunity. You guys are one of the only district we work with that's completely debt-free.
Of how many districts?
14. Varying sizes, some as big as 7,000 enrollment, some as low as 300. Because debt is so inexpensive, a lot of people borrow, a lot of districts borrow. So you guys, that's the only one that I've ever dealt with over the years. I've been doing this 15 years. It's completely debt-free. Keep maintaining that. Definitely encourage it.
Do you think about the 57%? Is that gonna hurt us in the long run?
No, I've talked to different districts. Some districts are under the were thinking that maybe DPI has this magical power that they can take some money away from districts. I really don't see that. The way the funding formula works, they want you guys to have good fund balance. They want you guys to be in good fiscal shape. They don't want you guys, having declining enrollment, having to borrow money, not being able to maintain your facilities. You guys don't have that problem.
But isn't Nina having a problem right now? Because they've got such a high, somebody's actually seen.
Well, I do that audit as well, so there's, they had some issues there. They had a very large surplus this year. It was $2.8 million, so they have a lot of cash. Nina, being bigger, being in the valley, they also have really high property taxes as well. More likely negatively aided if I had to guess. And they are lowering their levy for this next year. It was $1 million or 1 point, it was a big number, just to use up some of that cash. Yeah, there was a lawsuit. They were making some of the former administrators pay health insurance. One of them suing them for like $500, I think it was, or something. It was a pretty small number, but they felt that they shouldn't have to.
Well, I thought there was a lawsuit by a taxpayer.
Jerry Schreier.
Oh,
He wants the money.
Yeah, he wants his money back.
He's always calling.
Oh, is he? I don't know.
so, all the districts we
He's not
work
my
with,
personal
and
friend.
Nina's probably in the paper more than anybody else for both good and bad. It's,
Oh, yeah?
whatever the reason is, they're
You're right out there.
they're right out there. I know they had issues with their food service a few years ago when we first started
Oh, I
working with them.
remember that one.
They had, they had acute losses, and supposedly the board didn't know about it. It was in the paper 3-4 days a week. Yeah, so I mean, it's been a challenge for them. But having all that cash doesn't hurt, gives you options. taxpayer, all the taxpayers have the right to say, we don't think you're spending your money. That's why they elect you guys. That's kind of stewards and how the money should be spent. Anyone have any questions at this point?
The unallocated depreciation has a number that's 41% up compared to all the other ones that are down. Maybe we just describe it. The third line up from the bottom.
Sure. That number is calculated, I have to read that, it could be asset additions, I don't have the depreciation schedule from typically why it increases, if there were assets added, over the years that, randomly when the depreciation falls. I'd have to look at last year, see, I'm assuming there were several additions that were on last year, were on this year's plan. The track, we did a big
Track would probably be the likely
See
candidate.
why we went up in value that much, except the traffic.
And the track's a big component of that, because that's something that wasn't on there last year, depending on how many, what's the useful life of the track, 10 years, 20 years.
I think the word track helps me understand.
Okay, not a problem. Any other questions? Okay. As far as the rest of the statements, they're pretty straightforward compared to last year. I'd like to point out one footnote, page 37, your self-insurance. It's kind of illustrate their kind of a downward trend. Starting with the end of 2010, going to the end of 2012. Your ending liability went from 501,000 to 416,000. And that can happen for a variety of reasons, just the way the claims fall, the way the payments made. But generally speaking, when it's always good to see that liability go down. And previously mentioned the self-insurance has worked well for you guys. Probably is a contributing reason to why your fund balance is where it is. You have saved money on health insurance. Not every district can say that.
Depends how you look at it. We didn't fund it to the max this year, so we're not gonna see those increases.
I would assume not, yeah, that's it, yeah.
Right, you could small, medium, large.
Oh, you
funded.
did.
We didn't go large.
No, we didn't, we would have funded it to the max, it would have been $2,000 and some dollars, but we did $1,700 per person. So we're not gonna see the big.
I would assume not, obviously, when we get to the end of the year, we'll know for certain, but, I think that's a fair assumption. Last thing I'll point out, page 46. Your combining schedule of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance for special revenue funds. You mentioned, the Nina School District and food service. You guys did have a loss this year, and it did require a small operating transfer. And the reason for that, special revenue funds and food services, one of them aren't allowed to have a negative fund balance. It's not unusual to see that. We didn't have this last year. This year we did, it was only $955.
That does have a comparison to other years.
No, not the way it's scheduled, the money schedule later.
In your cover letter, you had student activity accounts.
Yes, I was just gonna get to that. That's okay. Oh, no, that's, before we get to that, does anybody have any questions on the financial statements?
The food service lost last year $40,000, and this year was just under $50,000.
Repeat the first part?
The food service, the loss last year was $40,000,
Okay.
and this year was just under $15,000. So we shrank it some, and we still have work to do. We're trying to monitor it day by day so that we can nip it in the bud before it gets out of hand.
That number sounds greater than this 955.
It's the 14,809 because we had the fund balance there.
Remaining fund balance.
So we ate up all the fund balance and then we went in the hole by 90 years.
So the reserves dwindled to a minus 955.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so that's at the end of the transfer. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to the letters. There's two letters there. The letter Dan was referring to is the letter to those charged with governance. We did make one comment there relating to, there's only a few of them, but just because it related to student activity, when we did it, what we do is we go to the individual schools and we do some testing. And they've been made aware of this, and we'll be testing it again next year. There were several disbursements that, with further review, were legitimate fine, but there was nothing in their records as far as like invoice. So we suggested to them, just so that in case anything ever was questioned, always keep your invoices with your checks. So we did, like I said, we look at it, we examined it further, everything was fine, and it's just that we said, beef up your record keeping. And because it related to student activity, that's what we felt, we wanted to make a comment in this one.
Give me an example of student activity accounts.
Let's see, high school,
Any of your clubs
middle school
typically.
band, they've got fund for a band, FFA,
I didn't know what it all encompassed.
the variety.
The larger one or the small?
Some are large, some are small, like some of them were trip related, they were all provide, additional documentation after that, it just wasn't in the files when we originally requested.
Where we going? One copy? One pack?
The other letter is our management letter, and we had one material weakness and 3 significant deficiencies. Material weakness, I believe, was the same as last year, was segregation of duties. It's more related to the size of the office. The cost benefit just isn't there to hire more people just to get rid of the college.
That's been brought up every year.
Now, unfortunately, the way the rules are, we're going to continue to, we have to bring it up every year. It is somewhat redundant, but the situation doesn't change, we're required to. The other 3 issues that we're doing are pretty common with the districts we work. The financial statement preppers at every district we work with. It would take someone with my level of experience working in Brian's position, and someone who's done audits and done financial statements to get rid of that. We haven't come across that situation. And that's one too where it raises more flags if you don't have a comment in versus if you do. Because so many people have that comment in. We also made a comment relating to journal entries, and we're already working with Brian on that. We've had we feel that, after working with him, that we shouldn't see that comment next year. There was a few larger entries this year that necessitated us putting the comment in. And the last comment is related to the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Again, we're working with Brian on that. I feel that'd be another comment that I would see disappearing from the letter. For district to decide, the comments that we made are what I call pretty common. I had a list of all the districts we work with. Generally, these 4 comments are going to be at most. Especially the smaller districts, just because of the size of their business offices, necessitates some segregation duties issues. Again, it doesn't mean we found anything and we didn't do some extra testing because of that, but because the situation exists, we're required to make note of it. Anyone have any questions?
If the segregation of duties becomes a problem, how do you find out?
Well, if obviously if improprieties occur, then we would discover those, or we discover, I don't know who discovers them. There's different steps that would be taken. Typically, we'd be having a different kind of meeting than we'd be having right now.
You always hear about it when it makes the news.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Up in there.
Yes.
Well, you can name 3 or 4 in the neighborhood, that makes the news after the horse is out the door.
Yeah, and then usually, obviously the authorities have to be involved, the DA, and it's quite a lengthy process.
Yeah, I expect that's it.
Oh,
But how much risk is the segregation duties problem to school districts? They most all have the same.
they do, and I think because of, there's certain areas we've identified and that, have more risk than others, and we do testing because of that. It doesn't mean if something's happening, we're always gonna catch it. Our tests aren't designed to do that. Our tests are designed by reasonable assurance that it's not happening. escalate, I'd probably start questioning it.
I saw him walking there, oh, man.
Sometimes the signs are obvious, living beyond their means, that sort of thing, but, you know, especially in a smaller town, everybody knows everybody, the odds are somebody's doing something. Not that you guys would hear about it first before anybody would even catch it.
The gym manager.
Yeah.
Many, many years.
By 2003, Ford still running.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Yep, and it comes up in the interim, you'll let Brian know, he knows how to get a hold of me. We'll get back to this weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jason. Appreciate it.
So how many years have they been our auditor now?
This is the second.
Second.
And as you can see, Jason, he's well versed in the process, and he's been a good guy to work with, and his team usually comes in with one or two other people to go through the process, so.
Great. And are you comfortable with the change that was made a couple years ago to these people? Everybody's still happy with it? No concerns?
I like easier.
Mental use is the same firm, so.
Right. Sometimes you gotta reflect back when you make changes, you know, whether it was good or bad. Absolutely. We're up to B, budget development.
Okay. With the audit report out, we'll go into 12-13 budget proposal, and in the information that was sent home last week for the board to look at and process through. Just want to do just a couple of talking points before we get into the discussion. In the materials that were sent home, we had two graphs from the Baird finance model. One was from June 11th that was shared at that time, and then the second was the current to-date Baird model. One item I just want to point out of a change from June to the current one is on that first section underneath the Fund 10 revenues and expenditures. In June, they had allocated revenues and expenditures of 9.418522 as far as our revenues and expenditures. That number has decreased since then to revenue, Fund 10 revenues by $94,922. So it's less than what it was in that June forecast. And then in the expenditures, that as well has reduced from June, $104,128. On that same graph, the same column going down, there's a mill rate or a total tax rate per thousand equalized valuation in June that was recognized at approximately $8.41. That number stays the same with our latest calculation as to where our mill rate calculation would be put out there if issued today at $8.41. The information below on the trends and graphs, it shows our total revenues, expenditures, fund balance, and then relationships with past years of experience and experience going forward. You can see that the fund balance does continue to dwindle as time goes on, but we've talked about before. Where we stand today, where we stand tomorrow, often is dictated by our state and local government and how that would be implemented. I think we've proven that we've been able to sustain quality budget development over the past few years with the practices that are in place. The next two sheets talk about our Fund 10 expenditures that we're anticipating for this year and our revenues. And Brian's going to talk exclusively on the significant changes from last year to this year, both positive and negative percentages, in just a couple seconds here. But this is like all of the entries that you see in the back. They're summarized in these two sheets. And you'll make references back and forth to this as we go forward. The final sheet just shows us a little longitudinal survey of levies throughout the past since 1984. You can see where our equalized rate had been, 84 up until this last year. With our anticipated look at where we are this year, we'd be looking at our current rates of approximately the 2009 year. And we will give rhyme and reason as to why we anticipate that going up in our further discussion. So with that, I guess we're going to break this down into three different sections. The revenues, the expenditures and then the funds. And then we'll take questions maybe at the end of each one. There's questions that come up and we can address those and move on kind of in that fashion and go from there. So, Ryan, you are up.
All right, and I think it'll be easiest, so we don't talk about the same thing multiple times. If we just rip out the Fund 10 expenditures and Fund 10 revenues from the environmental sheet.
There's two sheets there.
Two sheets, so I'll be referencing them in the percents, so hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. And then we're going to get started with the notice of the budget hearing.
For me, it's page 4 or 5.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, you rip those out, and then the 4 pages that say notice of budget hearing. And then we're going to talk about the notice of the budget hearing. Everyone have that up? Those set to the side.
You're out.
Yep. Now we're going to talk
We'll
about,
get to this one.
because we're going to reference the very one.
There's a whole bunch.
Page numbers. Where's the page numbers?
There's
Right,
3 of
notice
them.
of
There's
budget
4 of them? That's a pack of 4?
5, right?
For me, it's the 4th one from the end.
Got it.
It's all the end sheets.
Hmm?
It's all the end sheets.
Okay. Back 40.
Okay. Everyone has it up? It says a budget adoption 2012-13. The top part right here, the general fund, Fund 10, that's just showing us our fund balances from 10-11, 11-12, and 12-13. And what those numbers mean up there, it says audited 10-11. So that's what actually went through the audited. It says unaudited 11-12. It can technically be audited now. They're done with the audited, changes were made. So that one's really audited. And then the next column is what we are forecasting the budget amount to be for 12-13. And as you can see, with the fund balance, we're anticipating $9,403 surplus right now. Now going into the revenues area, the first grouping here is local sources. What that is, that's all your taxes that you get in from the municipalities. It's any student fees, it's gate admissions, interest on income, or such items. The area I want to highlight there is that the property taxes are going up by that approximately $400,000 amount there. And I want to preface this by saying too that we still don't have the valuation from the Department of Revenue. That was supposed to be out October 1st, and they failed to deliver it on time, and they say they're working on it. They have extra people working on it, so probably by the 15th or so they have to have it done. And then also, we're waiting for the Department of Public Instruction to get done with their equalization aid, which is going to be on October 15th. So we'll have that number firmed up on October 15th, and then we can send it out to the board too with more precise numbers when we get that. So keep that number in mind that the levy's going up by $400,000, because that'll play into when we talk about the levy and the mill rate towards that. So then the next section is our 300s or other school districts within Wisconsin. That's open enrollment in. And Scott will talk about those numbers later on, but they did go up a little bit. Maybe I'll talk about it later. We don't have any 400s, 500s. We could see a little bit in there from CISA 6 from a grant that they've included us on. But to remain conservative, there's nothing budgeted in that area. And that's also an in and out. We give the money and then we spend right away on whatever. It's more of a reimbursement. And the next area is our state sources. So the 610s are categorical aids. That's for transporting students. There's Common School Fund aid.
Royal, did you say that's bus?
Yeah, transportation.
Did that, I mean, that went up a lot, is there a reason?
No, the increase was from the state granting us more aid if we tax to the max. So they want everyone's taxes to go up for some reason, I don't know. Puzzled.
But what kind of benefit do you get if you do or don't do that?
This year was it's about $45,000 aid payment for that. The next one right under that is the 620s. That's our equalization aid. So the 620 plus the 210 sources, the local taxes, is our brunt of our revenues. And that's where they say if we're 50% aided or not, or that's where those numbers come from. That amount has dropped. And again, the taxes have gone up, so the share is being shifted more over to the taxpayers. And those numbers will be adjusted by October 15th, and I'm optimistic that they're going to go down, that we'll get more state aid, and then more of the burden will be lifted from the taxpayers. So less in taxes, more in state aid, which is a good thing for the taxpayer.
Okay. Next question.
Okay.
The local sources, that is going up 404,000.
Yep.
And then we're losing, well, you don't know yet, or not, 610,000. So,
And overall, our overall revenues are dropping, also in the whole mix.
do they,
The max, so we don't get, the state doesn't get blamed, we get blamed.
So
what's the reason for the $610,000 drop for the state aid? Because of the,
that's how our FTE dropped big time. We had about a 59 student drop in FTE.
so that's what?
And it's
So
only
they're
for
all-
it's only for this calculation, and we only use it for that calculation. And there's like 3 or 4 different FTE counts, so we don't want to confuse you. Scott has some different FTE counts, but for this one, it's the third Friday plus summer school. So it's the 10-11 year and 11-12 year. From those years, we saw 59 FTE student drop for that calculation. Again, that count is only used for the equalization.
So last year's FTE equivalency number is our calculating number for this year's revenue limit. It is 59 less than the previous budget development.
But that doesn't actually mean 59 students.
No, it's not an actual head count, no. That's just a calculation of all the variables, whether it be summer school or, our students that are here on campus to tie into that open enrollment as well. That's the big chunk of why that aid is down. 59 students, minor times roughly, $7,000, $8,000 a head.
Where does it show up? Because we're a tax-rich district.
Yep.
Where does that, did they take, what did the money came, where did that go then? Where does that, how does that figure?
Well, that's part of, when you have the revenue limit, we can only tax so much. So now we're declining enrollment, so they're saying we don't need as much revenue, so we're contracting in our overall revenue. But then inside of it, we're also losing students, so it's hurting us a second time over by the state being able to back away more money and more money being shifted to the taxpayer. So we're contracting in 2 different ways. And
So that's basically the 600
yeah.
that besides,
Yeah.
So the state's wisdom and opinion is, if you have less kids, we're going to give you less money.
Yeah.
yeah, evaluation.
Yeah, and if you have too much water property, we're going to give you less.
So that's all it is,
Okay.
600.
That's the short version?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on the next page is the SAGE money that we get. We're still a SAGE school. And I just projected that to go down a little bit from last year. So overall, we're down by a little over $500-some thousand in the state sources overall. In federal money, the 730s, TPI special project grants, That's our Title II money. We use that for professional development for our staff, whether it be for going for conferences or on-site training. The 750s are for our Title I grant. That's for reading and math.
Give me the IASA, please. That's what it is. Tell me what that means.
I think that's old terminology. It should be ESEA. Elementary and
That sounds like
Education Act. Sometimes terminology just doesn't get changed for some concrete game. And that's so much different from last year because we had a lot of carryover from last year. So it's kind of, the 120,000 is low from the prior year because it's being carried forward. And those are the areas too that it won't be affected this year if the federal government doesn't act on anything and the $1 trillion in cuts happen. We're told that this won't be touched this year, but then the following year it would be slashed. 800s, we don't have anything in there.
Brian, what is a 780?
A 780, that was our ed jobs money. So in
Repeat, I didn't hear.
Education jobs, because 2 years ago, the federal government gave districts X amount of dollars to support staffing needs within districts.
One-time bonus if you use it for this.
Remember that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I forgot. Okay,
I didn't know what it was called.
Education jobs fund.
thank you.
And then the 800s, we don't have anything right there. If we had any sale of fixed assets like a bus or anything, it would show up under there. 900s, the 970, that's refunded disbursements. That's our workers' compensation dividend. It's our drug program rebates and our E-rate funding. And E-rate's a federal program that, depending on our free and reduced, we get discounted on our phone, internet, and cell phone bills. So our discounts usually right around 60% or in that range. So that's money that goes back into that account when we request it at the end of the year. Is there any questions on the revenues?
They're not set.
No, there's a couple areas in there that, the big areas are unset, unfortunately.
That's one of the reasons why we took this meeting, our annual meeting to the 22nd, so we would have the accurate number when the board would act on the budget, that it would be accurate. For districts that have their meeting prior to that, they have to reset their budgets with the accurate numbers. So when the board decided to do that, that's the reason why.
That was also discussion. That policy is to give the school's calendar so it makes sense.
Right.
This decision gets made before this decision, before this decision, before this decision, the way it would make sense.
That would be a great
And they've talked about it for years, and I don't know what stops it from happening. Do you have an answer for that?
Well, there's also things that the Department of Revenue could do and are capable of doing, but they don't do it. They can do their work faster and earlier, and we could have these numbers much earlier, but they just refuse to do it. Because DPI is waiting on the Department of Revenue for the equalized value, and they could have those all months before. And it's the same thing with the first dollar credit and the lottery credit. They could figure those out beforehand, so we could take credit for them at our, when we set our mill rate, instead of the municipality taking credit for them when they're setting the overall mill rate for municipality.
It just doesn't seem like the train is lined up straight.
Agreed.
So that's nothing new.
All right, we'll go on to the expenditures then. And we're still on Fund 10. This is our general fund, operating fund. So we have all the instructional costs here. Those are, I call it all the one-on-one contact with the students. Those are people that are in the classroom all the time, educating the students or helping the students. And then these amounts also include the salaries, benefits, supplies, purchase services, capital projects, and like items in there. So that amount went up about $250,000. We had some staffing changes and also benefit changes that affected that. And I guess I can talk about those right now. We can go back to the Barrett model on expenditures. I just want to, if you look at the expenditures, and then it says number 2, total employee benefits. So 11/12, our actual was 1.5 million. We're budgeting 1.7 million. And if you break out health insurance from that, and that's our big area, our actual for health insurance was $887,000. When this year we're budgeting just over $1 million. Then when you back up and look at what was budgeted for 11/12, it was $1.1 million. So that signifies that $300,000 savings that we had for the health insurance. So that's why we've always kind of, we changed our funding for our health insurance. I think we're all aware of that. And by doing the change, I don't believe we'll see that huge change from budget to actual like we did in the past. So you could see that the total benefits went up by almost 12.5% or so. And that's from that kind of write down of the health insurance compared to budgeted. And if you go back to, go back to last year, it would look the same way. Is there any questions about that?
I think, Dan, you commented on that with the auditor. That's exactly what you were referencing with that, the funding formula in the past to the full versus now to the anticipated. It's reflected in how this number's been generated.
So we won't have it next year.
Right. So the potential to have that surplus has just been narrowed. If we're here a year from now talking about a surplus, via health insurance, it's going to be a good thing for us, but realistically, it won't be as large as what we are right now.
Then we'll move on to the support services, and that's guidance, any staff training, the Board of Education's under here, legal expenses, the principals, district administrator, my agreement, the buildings and grounds, transportation, technology, and our all of our insurance lines, our property liability, workers' comp, and unemployment insurance is under here. The $210,000 showed a slight increase from that, and that was a new hire and selection of a different benefit package than the previous employee had. Then under the $270,000 or $270,000 function insurance and judgments, this was the switch from the Indiana insurance to our current plan. And again, the insurance market is really hardening and getting really aggressive, or non-aggressive, I guess. So I foresee that amount going up again probably this next year also. They're just not willing to give it away like they did in the past. They're seeing some big losses out there.
General administration, or what does that cover?
General administration covers the board salaries, the audit expense, legal expense, and then district administrator, I believe, is under there also.
And school building administration, that went up $40,000. That includes, is that the bus stuff?
That's the principal's area there.
Just down.
Their salaries. I had to dig a little bit deeper on who else is under that area. There, the secretarial staff is also usually under those areas. It could have
The
been.
thing is, it was 470 and what? 10, 11. Then it went down to 412. Now it went back up to 450. Why would it go down?
It could have went down that someone got moved into a different function area, and then they were put back into the correct place. For some reason, people were juggled around last year, and this year they were put back in their right place.
Right, but that the school site classification fall into that.
The school site is under that 210,000. Overall, we're looking at
Gil under, you think?
He's under the 230,000. That's why it went down to $2,000. Under the non-program transaction, there's the 410,000 is the inter-fund transfer. That's our special ed budget. Special ed has to equal zero at the end of the year. We get money from the feds and the state, and then whatever's left over, then the general fund picks up those costs at the end of the year. The budget went up some. And then the 430,000 is open enrollment out. And that also went up slightly from the prior year. Overall, we had a 6.5% increase in expenses, or about $386,000 more. And we are still within budget and still have that $9,000 surplus at the end. Is there any questions about Fund 10 before we move on? What?
Gil's fees were reduced by over 20 grand, we only saved $2,000.
There's other items.
We've got the rest of it.
There's other items.
You figure these expenses, do you just, are they actual, do you put a percent on them? How do you, you should have actual.
Under the areas for the budgeted, the supervisors of the areas are asked to develop the budget around their needs, and then Scott and I determine what their amount is, and then they split it up within the areas. That's the same for the principals and director of curriculum and special ed too.
It always seems like we have so much money left.
But one thing, Dan, your in-services, your teacher credits, right? Teachers are going to budget for their entire credits, but may not take them. So I mean, there's things like that, and you can't blame teachers for doing it, because if the right class comes up, they have to take. And there may be some other items like that, I don't know. That's just one I can think of.
And we try to look at the trends, you know, we had a large cost this year for teacher credits, but, you know, if we look at it over the past years, we wouldn't budget for that whole amount, but we'd still budget for maybe more than's required, because we don't want
I could
to budget
see
under.
being off $100,000 and $600,000. That just,
I would
Well,
think
over half of
not.
that was based on the insurance. I know that.
There's a lot of districts that aren't looking at it that way.
I know,
They're
but,
seeing
I know,
minuses.
but
I agree, being able to hit the margin at a narrower scope, I think, uses our funds as
That's your goal.
more efficiently. You
Yeah.
know, with that, I agree with that concept, Dan. You know, some of the trends that we don't have control over that often play into our expenditures, and then we've mentioned this before, is the cost of fuel. You know, and the market consumables that we look at, and, you know, we gauge where we're at and try to trend, but whether or not they followed through last year was a very warm winter, and I think we read that in other districts where they showed surplus, and they credited some of their surplus savings due to that. So those variables are always out there.
Substitution.
heating fuel last year?
I think it was $30,000 or $40,000, and we had in there, well, we should have had in there about 80,000, but I cut that down. We didn't use a whole lot of natural gas, we didn't use plowing or any of those services, so we saved a lot there. The building principals also did a good job of leaving some back for reserve to, you know, I mean, we don't want the philosophy because you have a budget
the state, their wisdom says if you have less children, we're going to give less money.
Do you understand that though, that you still have to heat the building, you still have to run the buses? Plus, you probably lose one in every class, and so you're not going to cut out English 9 because
But if the staff has an increase of students, they need an increase in wages. If they have less students, they get a decrease in wages. You heard what I said.
Well, you don't, no, I don't. It's the state's the one that has the
Right.
problem, okay,
Right.
not us.
But our particular staff, if they have an increased number of students, they want more money. If they have a decreased number of students, do they get less money?
I've never heard that. I've
You've
never
never
heard a
heard that?
teacher say because I have 26 kids over 24, I need more money. Have you heard them say that, Neil?
Yes.
You've heard a teacher say because I have more kids, I should.
That was concerned why they needed more money when they carried signs and masks.
Well, I wasn't down there, maybe. I didn't need the signs. I've never heard
Good
it.
questions on our expenditures and reason and rationale. If we're comfortable with the discussion at this point, I recommend looking at the next section of dealing with our other funding.
And then next areas are special projects funds. For all purposes, it's Fund 21, which is our donation account, and then Fund 27, which is special education account. The fund balances up there represent Fund 21's balance for donations, not Fund 21 or 27, because it's zero. So it's Fund 21, that's fund balance. Fund 27 is zero. You can see the increase there in expenditures there, and of course the revenue is going to go up because it's a self-balancing account. So whatever the state and federals don't pick up, then the Fund 10 picks up. Fund 38 and 39, that's our debt service fund. Like here tonight, we don't have any debt service, so that's an easy one to follow. Capital Projects Fund, that's our Fund 41. Last year we put in $40,000. This year we placed in $100,000, and it's not set in stone. It's just in there right now, and again, we vote on that on the annual meeting, and it's something that the taxpayers take up for discussion. Fund 50 here is our food service fund. You can see in 11-12, our fund balance went down to zero. It started out at $13,000. So that's where if you looked at that $14,000 that we had negative, that's where we get the $955 transfer. This year, I'm looking for a $335 surplus at the end of the year. And I know that this is an uphill battle because of all the changes at the federal level. They're pushing much more fresh vegetables and fresh fruits. And with the drought now, prices are going through the roof. And they don't offer that stuff on commodities like they used to. So the federal government kind of had our hands there. They made that program very expensive very quickly.
Are we sticking with the 850 calories per meal?
We're working hard to follow that guideline, right?
But if I understand, they can have extra vegetables and fruit.
We slow down.
Am I right? That's what I'm asking. I was gonna.
I've heard some feedback from students, particularly at the lower levels of, well, hey, I'd like one more of something. And the guidelines that we're obligated to see through on don't allow that to happen. And it's been in the media as well in other districts and how some of the challenges that they've had addressing that need. I guess if the students feel that they're not getting enough, then there's an option. Always bring your own lunch from home is encouraged, to offset what they feel they need. Our obligation, we're expected to meet the guidelines.
But isn't it true they can get more vegetables and fruit? Or
No.
is this stuck to the 850?
I don't know the answer to that question, Tammy, if that is an option. It would seem like it would make sense to address that or be able to do that, but I don't know the answer.
I've been trying to, I'll come in someday and see if I get an extra apple.
Extra half, boy, you do.
Can I ask a question?
Or just one more.
May I ask Brian a question regarding the cafeterias? Didn't the daily price of a daily meal increase? And how did the difference of that increase make a difference in that budget item?
It made a you talked about is the one that, again, the federal government is requiring us to increase our rates, and we'll be increasing them again next year or the following year, because the federal government is saying is our meals have to be at $2.50 a plate or whatnot, so that the federal government isn't subsidizing normal priced meals. So we're probably a little low on the food prices, but again, that federal government rule says we can only raise it by
10 cents a
10
year.
cents. So kind of hand tying us in all different directions.
What is the food budget as opposed to the fund balance?
How much do we pay in food?
Right. How much comes in and out of the food side of our school district?
That's right here. That's the
Okay.
the $430,000.
Gotcha.
Their expenses, $431,000 in revenues.
Okay, so bottom line is the cash flow.
Yep,
And the top line is the reserves going to zero.
correct. So that at the end of this year, I'm projecting a slight surplus of $335.
And that's a lot of money from reserves going in 2 years.
I agree, you hate
It's
to
a
show
farmer's, that's right, Dan.
show a deficit in any of these categories, and last year at this time, I think we had the same discussion of our intent to focus in on this area. I will note that, a $40,000 deficit last year is now 13, so there was some focus, and we're gonna hear about some feeding programs that aided in reducing some of that deficit as well. And we'll continue to look at ways to become more efficient in food service.
Because what concerns the taxpayer or as a person who pays full rate is also that you're going to continue to raise the rate for the cash flow, but the cash flow won't be as much because people who would pay that cash may not be inclined to take the lunch because it's been outpriced for the person who's paying full rate. That makes sense. So although may increase the amount of money that you have to pay per plate, parents may opt to just then go with the cold lunch. And so kind of, you still have the same problem, but just in a different light, I guess.
Well, we're cheap because somebody was telling me they pay $5 a meal and their programs go in the balance.
Any other questions on food service?
Don't sub it out to someone that promises you a saving and then sends you a bill. We've heard of that.
The what?
There are districts that have subbed out their food
Oh,
service,
yeah.
promised a savings, and then sent them a bill. That doesn't work.
I think they're doing it. I mean, take it from that amount to that amount and keep it better.
You do better.
We're trying to do better in looking at the daily costs and the per meal costs, so that when we're planning our meals, that the price is gonna kind of affect the menu down.
One of the initiatives within that, with our buy-in to our shared purchasing agreement, that allows us to access Cisco Food, and they're our new primary food vendor outside of the commodities market, which is ran through the federal government. They've got a program that breaks down meal by meal cost. And is our meal A paying for itself, or did we need to make different choices and changes from within to make sure that cost of the meal is being covered? That's one of the Brian was referencing about narrowing our focus down to the individual meal, 2 days meal, how much did it cost, and how much did it cost to prepare for it, when you look at all of our labor costs, and the cost of the product itself. And Cisco's gonna assist us with some of that calculating this year.
I think they did a great job of bringing it down.
Fund 60, you should have an insert for a change on that one. There was a typo on that one, a little slip, but nice paper clip to attach it to your booklet. There's a typo on that.
We did too.
I got a question mark on that.
This is our student activity funds. These are monies that students raise and get donations and fundraise for. There's going to be some change to this account too. The auditors informed us that sports can no longer be under this account. So what may happen, and I want to talk to a lot again, this is all done at the building level at the middle school and high school for these accounts. Fund 73, that's our trust fund, our OPEB, post-employment benefit, that's what we paid off. You can see on 11/12, there's 2.3 million. By the end of this year, we should be just under 1.5 million. Again, it should be going down because we're paying out benefits from it. And it'll last us till 2018. Fund 80 is our community service fund. We reduced the levy there from $25,000 to $6,000. I forget what that. It's that $6,000 now accounts for a penny of the overall levy.
Per thousand.
Per thousand, yeah.
So that's what you're gonna fund that.
Yes.
You have to fund, you're gonna fund that? That's the people that come in?
The STEP program,
$6,000.
Well, we're going to eat up that fund balance.
we had a carryover there from last year. Last year, our overall budget was 25,000. That was allocated for that, and this year, because we didn't spend out all of it, we would like to maintain that $25,000 threshold. But to do that, we only need to recognize $6,000 to the budget.
And then currently, we don't use any Fund 90 accounts. And then on the bottom is the 12-13 levy summary. You can see on the 12-13 year, we have the 4.9 million in general fund, $100,000 in capital expansion, and $6,000 in Fund 80, the community service fund. That's a total increase of 11%. And you can see from the past years, we went down by 9.5% from 9-10 to 10-11. And then dropped another 3.5%, 10-11, 11-12. To note in those areas too, that's when the state did a lot of fancy accounting to lower everything and then backing everything out to shift it over to the taxpayer. We also had the Ed Jobs Fund, which did the same thing, and ARA also did the same thing. And that is those sheets. We have this longitudinal sheet, this little graph. That's like the third or fourth page. And this is just reference for the board of where our mill rate's been since 1984 and how it's changed over the time. Where the little diamond there on the state is the square. So you can see that in 1992 we were over $20 on the mill rate. And last year we were at $7.67, and then this year going to bump back up to 841 around, 841. And that was where we were at in 2009, we were at 839. Is there any questions on anything overall?
I guess I don't have a full understanding of the expenditure side of things. When things go up, why? I don't know if this is the time or place to, line by line say, this one's going up this much money and this is why. Ones that go down, we seem to get good explanation for. The ones that go up, it's just the way it is.
Well, we can go through some of the larger changes on the expenditures on the Baird model. It's probably easier to look at that because they're all the same expenses. That's this sheet, and that says expenditures.
Okay.
Or we can kind of see that the total salary is the first line that went up by 1.9%. We had staffing changes, and then we also had the increase in salary that accounted for that.
And does that include the WRS change?
No, that's on the next line.
Okay.
So then number 2 is the total employee benefits. So that has the WRS change, the change that it's going to go up to 6.65% up from 5.8 or 5.9%.
Let's see if I understand this correctly. If we give staff a 1% increase in wages, and the WRS goes up to our cost being 0.75%, that sound right? Then it's a 1.75% increase.
We're not paying the teachers
That's our half of the WRS, it goes up 0.75.
Yeah, our half was up by points.
Right. So a 1% raise cost the district, because of WRS, 1.75.
Well, you can't say that's a raise to the teacher, because that's what we have to do. If we were
It's a
paying
cost to
them-
the taxpayers that goes to the staff.
If we were paying 1.75, we're not paying 1.75 of theirs. We're paying
We're paying, I mean, we're paying.
The WRS
0.75
cost
on
goes
top
up.
of it.
And the WRS is a benefit. It's not, granted, eventually someday will be income or salary or livelihood, but how it's currently calculated, WRS is a benefit, it's not a salary. When we negotiate or talk salary, that's solely salary take-home pay, not benefits, which the district has chosen to support,
I understand it to be a cost to the district that is a delayed benefit to the staff.
Yes, it increases benefit costs, it's not salary costs, correct.
But won't the teacher share go up also?
Yes, it will.
0.75.
Yes, it'll go up at the same rate.
Thank you. Because we're not paying their share.
It's a
Where
50/50
it's 50/50.
split.
Correct. Any other highlights from employee benefits, Brian?
That 0.75 on the total increase is about $31,000, just over $31,000 increase from that 0.75 on a total
And
salary.
that 0.75,
It includes the 1% increase.
you pay 0.75 on the old wage plus the 1%.
Yeah,
So
so
it's in.
I took the 0.75 increase on the new total, which includes the 1%. And then the benefit increase is also, as I explained before, the difference in funding for the health insurance, that we came in $300,000 better. If we wouldn't have came in that $300,000 better, we would actually be budgeting less in benefits than we did last year. Because we add on $300,000 plus the 1.5 million, we come up with 1.8 million, and we're just under 1.8 million budgeted this year.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. You go through that again.
This took a while to do it.
And Brian and I talked that one through for probably 15 minutes to try.
It sounded like you said we made money, but we're spending more money. Did I misunderstand?
It comes back to how we're funding our self-funded insurance, okay?
Dan was talking
Which we
about.
talked about earlier, how we used to fund it to the max,
Right, now
okay?
we're partial.
And now we're choosing not to fund it to the max. If we were funding it to the max, as we have in the past, this number would be significantly higher.
That's 1784.
Correct. That would be $300,000 larger than. If we had the working budget from 9, 10, 10, 11, I'm assuming that it would reflect a similar increase on an annual basis based on that past model. So it's less than what it typically would have been.
Would have been if we would have done the other way.
Would have been over $2 million.
Yeah, right. I added that too. 17 plus 3, I got that.
Social Security, that's part of this as well.
Oh, he's got a calculator. I did it in my head.
The purchase service, the threes, those are in the open enrollment and some utility cost increases there. There's also diesel fuel under that as well. The fours and fives, the non-capital and capital objects, those are kind of fluid. So some years we'll buy capital items or items over $300, and sometimes we'll just buy smaller things. So those amounts go back and forth every year. The sevens, the insurance and judgments, when that was the insurance change, we also, unemployment insurance also got increased there due to some of the staffing changes.
EFG,
And AFG is under there too, their $30,000 contract. Last year, we only got $18,000 of it accounted for on there. So this year we're anticipating a full $30,000. So that was a large increase. The transfers are the special ed transfers like we talked about. And then the dues and fees are for conference registrations and also for entry fees and things for sports for the students. Does that help a little bit?
You're gonna guarantee us we're not gonna
other district, we're able to see some of the increases coming, and we're able to act quickly and get things kind of pushed through very, very quickly on a larger scale items. Like, for example, the roof. We wanted to get that paid for before June 30th, but we didn't, and we had money left over. It's just those kind of things when you have such a large amount left over. We really don't want to be buying 100,000 pens just to spend out $300,000, and they're going to end up being large dollar items.
You won't spend it just because you have more using toward a good value.
So the roof purchase didn't make it in certain calendar year.
It was not part of that.
It's just going to be paying for it tomorrow.
Good questions. Any others for, move forward?
I got my numbers, man. We're gonna be at over $10,000.
What's that?
We're gonna be over 10,000.
Per student spending, and whether we're still on that, Brian?
If I add it up, are we at, pretty sure at 877? Student count?
Yeah.
That's our head count number, which is different than,
See, here you got.
You do a 3-year average gain.
2012, 13, you got 901. And the physical.
right,
Which one do you use?
which one do you use? When we get to that sheet, that first one, that 901, that's the budgetary number that the DPI uses, or the revenue worksheet, that's the number they use. And that's
Is that what we use?
what's that?
Is that what we're gonna use?
That's what we will be told to use. That's what our,
So if I wanna figure the cost per student, I'm supposed to use 901.
is that the number you use, Brian, in that opinion?
I mean, it depends on the education.
It's really a
cost.
difficult process to go through.
Because, I mean, if you're looking at the cost per student, I mean, I guess I would rather veer towards the head count. Because in the total FTE, a 4K is only half of a person. And we don't teach them differently because they're half of a person. They're still a full lot.
You don't give them half a teacher?
Half a lunch.
What was your question?
What would happen if you left it the same? As last year,
The budget?
the 7.6 to 11. You wouldn't come out.
I guess I don't understand, leave what to say.
Well, if you left, it was 7.61 last year.
Oh, if you left, okay, the mill rate?
You know,
Well, one,
it's roughly 80, is it $80 on a $100,000 house?
approximately, yeah.
People aren't gonna like that.
Well, what would happen is that we would under levy by $400,000 approximately. And then we lose that revenue limit authority for future years. So then we're going to be running a deficit then until we run out of our fund balance, and then we're going to ask the taxpayers for a referendum to support us when our fund balance is drained.
So you're referencing if we were to take the 400-some thousand out of a fund balance transfer to retain where we're at?
A lot of schools are doing it.
Some schools have, yes.
I don't like sitting there with $5 million of taxpayer money.
And if you want up 12%, pay me now, pay me later. What's the difference?
That's my opinion. I don't know. I understand what you're saying, but
You don't give raises.
You don't get- if
You don't give raises, declining enrollment, and increased taxes.
Yeah.
Not a good combination.
no, they don't, there's no incentive
Not a
for
good
anybody to save money.
Well, one of the reasons we have that fund is to thank the teachers. Because a lot of them came out of their pockets.
So that's
And did you ever, are there things that we should be looking at improving in this school that we just, it seems things come up and say we can't afford it, maybe we should be improving some of the things in our school if we have. I don't know, I'm not in there, so, I mean, is that all we need our roofs, or do we need something inside the building? I don't know.
And I think it's probably an opinion of a board and their mindset and how they want to address or operate the management of the budget. If the philosophy is to utilize fund balance, I think that has to be a majority board thought to do that, knowing that at some day that we may have to go to the public. Things may change though. I mean, there's so much uncertainty as to what the full funding formula will look like down the road. It's rolling the dice, I guess. But it is definitely an option if the majority feels that's the direction they'd like to go into.
I certainly have trouble supporting raises, decline enrollment, and increased taxes.
What do raises have to do with declining enrollment?
Did it not affect us, the suggestion that we raise taxes? Giving raises, did it affect us now being asked to raise taxes?
We didn't give them that much of a raise.
We're not asking for that much raise in taxes, but they are connected.
I don't know. I do know, but I'm gonna shut up. I think
We deal with the same thing in the town. You don't, go on Max either.
So have you ever not gone to Max in the
No,
town?
yeah.
Have you ever not gone to Max in the town, Dan?
Nope.
All right.
I know, it's a stupid.
It's a nice gesture.
It sounds nice, Dan.
We're building a town hall.
Yeah, and I mean, if we were
I
back
understand.
16 or 17 years ago when the revenue limits weren't here, I would have no problem chopping off that 400,000 because at a future date we could recoup that when we needed it. You know, at that time you could set the mill rate at whatever you thought you needed, whether it be $20 or $5. But we just don't have that anymore, and we have to live by the state rules. And I think Dan understands the rules that we have to live by.
Yeah. And in fact, decline enrollment for how many years? A lot more than 2 years. The cost per student has been going up.
Well,
We're spending more per student and not necessarily getting better off.
what did you just say? Excuse me. What did you just say?
I said we're spending more per student, not necessarily getting better outcomes.
Well, I know you have a very negative view about our school. I don't have that. Whatever.
I mean, nobody's ever come to Holly. Sitting there with, I don't think staff like. I don't think. What are you gonna do? Like, what can we do about it?
Concerned with the city.
Yeah, I'm sure. The other way.
I think we should thank God that we're sitting in this position. A lot of districts aren't.
Thank you.
This is the audit review or budget development.
Sort of went through Fund 41, how would you like to address that one at this time?
I guess, how much board input on budget development do we want to do? We are presented with a recommendation, maybe thumbs up, thumbs down, or do you decide to say budget development is a board decision or management decision?
Well, no, did I sign on for it?
Just, if there's any items that you think are too high or too low, that's board decisions, I think. Or questions on it?
Well, if you look at your state aid, I mean, we're looking at $610,000. That's a big chunk. That's almost, what, $800, $700 per person. Per student.
And we
That's
don't
a
even
big
know
issue.
that's firm, Dan.
I know. So that's how you deal with it. And then we're raising up 400. So actually, you're raising taxes on people $404,000, but you're losing 600.
No.
Correct.
value goes up, which can reduce the mill rate. And then
So our values are going down. So I mean, you can look at it, you can look at the.
is the values going up or down?
I've heard reports from districts, and the equalized value isn't out yet, because the Department of Revenue does that, but districts that have municipalities within them and just within them, they're able to kind of figure out what their equalized value is. We have too many townships that are shared with other districts that I wasn't able to do that, but they're reporting about 5% decrease in
Yeah,
their values.
Ours are going down.
And those are some wealthy property districts.
Yeah.
You're not in a wealthy district. We live in Royalton.
So you can look at it that way, I mean, we're losing 610, but we're only adding 404.
We're still losing 200.
Yeah, so you can look at it.
And the numbers will change, I'll guarantee that.
I think they should be applauded for the fact they don't feel they have to spend every penny
Oh,
they
no.
budgeted.
Okay, any other questions on A and B? To see and review anything there? You want to keep that in there or not? 100,000 affects the levy in what?
It reduces Fund 10 levy, and then we take it from Fund 10 and put it into Fund 41. So it's not any new money, it's just we're reallocating it from Fund 10 to Fund 41.
It's not costing the taxpayers any more money.
No, because it's still a total amount that we can tax the citizens. It's just we're going to take off 100,000 of that and move it to Fund 41.
And historically, we haven't had a Fund 41. If you needed to fix a roof, you got it out of Fund 10.
And we talked about this earlier.
Tool,
Yeah.
D, student enrollment.
Okay, just some comments on our student enrollment. We submitted our GPI enrollments to the state, just to give some insight as to where we are as comparison to this last year. Underneath the first 2011, 12, 13 calculation there, you can see the 892, and then for 12, 13 to 901. That's the number that we're talking about that is reflected within our revenue limit, what the state is building their equation office to us locally. The one number that I want to recognize that's not on here is the 1011 number, okay? And that 1011 number was 954, okay? And that's why we're seeing that significant drop in A and B of the students because of that roughly, 50, 60 student range that has been recognized for this year. Next year, we've got some stability. It's looking to stabilize slightly, and know that those numbers are always into that 3-year rolling average as far as student enrollment. Okay. The open enrollment in and out, 11, 12, we had 36 enrolled in, 57 out, and this year the calculation at this time was 42 in and 56 out. So that's viewed as positive, moving in the right direction. Ideally, we'd like to be even or above. We're making some progress towards that goal. The student physical head count, I met with Angie this morning. We talked about this number. This is the number of students present in district. If you walk the halls, how many students would you find in our district on a daily basis? 11, 12, we were at 876, and this year's physical head count was at 877, so which is an increase of 1 from last year. And that can be accredited to an increase at our lower levels, primarily our 4K numbers, which saw an enrollment increase, and our kindergarten numbers as well that have increased with that. Comparison back to 2010, 11, that number was 936. So that's where we saw that significant change in our student count. Summer school isn't listed on here, but I brought it in because I thought you might be interested in it as well. And summer school is based on a percentage of each individual student and a number of total hours that they participate in programming. In 2010-11, the district was recognized with 14 FTE or full-time equivalencies. So that increased our overall enrollment by 14. In 2011-12, it was 15. And then for this year, 12-13, we were recognized at 12. So we had a slight reduction. That's based on participation primarily, the number of students that are participating in the program. So we have less than 3 this year with that.
How does that count arrived? I thought summer school had way higher numbers than what this reflects. Tell me the math.
Okay, it's a total calculation of student hours, and I'm going to refer this to Mr. Delich because he compiles this specific form for discussion.
It's the total amount of minutes. So you add up the number of kids, the time each child spent in a particular class. That class comes up with a minute total for the whole duration of the summer school. We had was
What would the head count be to get to this, roughly? I mean, there must be an average idea of how many kids are in summer school.
450 was the ballpark number.
Yeah, I mean, this makes a ridiculous low number,
Right.
based on how the math is done.
Well, remember, it's the head count
Yep.
and the total minutes, and then that's divided by 48,600 to get an FTE.
But if you didn't know that, you'd think, wow, this isn't much for summer school.
And then it's 40% of that. It's not the total number of FTEs.
Thank you. I've never saw the math of the formula that did that. I know the numbers are way higher than what this reflects.
You know, and that's why districts see the summer school programming as a potential resource to increase your FTEs for your district. Sound summer school programming aids a district in a positive way.
But you have to have summer school go up by tens and tens and tens to get this affected a small amount.
Have to have them go all three months.
Okay?
Questions on
Yep.
student enrollment? 5, I see nothing under it. 6, curriculum improvements in the month for 20 buyers. 6A is youth option approvals.
Okay, at your workstation, there was a document that was shared at the current, and historically, the board has looked at youth options. Just a quick oversight again, the board needs to recognize youth option recommendations before the students get enrolled and take the class. The recommendation in front of you is for the spring of 2013. The individual is requesting a nursing assistant class. And again, requests that come via youth option are classes which are not able to be held on campus. This class particularly believes that Fox Valley Tech, that this person is looking to act as a one-class, 3-credit college credit that this student will earn, translate to our local credits worth 0.75 at the high school level for this individual. We would look to make this formal recommendation at the October board meeting with a motion and recommendation to approve it as the board so chooses.
The dollars?
Dollar amount on this, I believe, well, regardless of the cost, districts are obligated to pay for it. I believe it's about $700 and some dollars. Matt, you had it written down?
682.
Okay, 682.
Right. It's generally always done, but we don't see them.
Right, that's,
Any questions on that? B, summer feeding program summary.
okay. I'm assuming members have had an opportunity to look at the information shared in the materials, and I'll just give a little oversight. We kind of touched on some of the reasons for the district to explore this option. First and foremost, I believe the program was a success. Profit was generated to the district, and I feel that it went well this year, and knowing that it targeted kids that could seek breakfast and lunch at our school, services throughout the summer is a positive. Like we all know that some students don't have that option available for them, and they saw it as a resource. It was primarily used during our summer school programming, in which students before summer school program would be engaged in breakfast and in lunch, and that alone was a significant game changer, in my opinion, on the productivity of our students here. We knew that every student coming in had that nutrition before they started, so their effectiveness during the day increases within that. As far as the meals served throughout the program, you can see the 2,300 for the breakfast, and approximately 3,647 lunches were served, total of 5,970 meals over the summer, which our students and community took advantage of. cost of doing this. Obviously, there's cost involved, and that was one of our potential focuses to ensure that we would not exceed our profit with our expense. Salaries to facilitate this were $4,102.11. Benefits that go alongside salaries was $551.30. And the food costs, which were purchased from our district outside of the commodities which the district received, was $2,134.68. So total cost to run this project was $6,787.93 to the district. Total revenue generated in reimbursements from the state were returned at $16,821.86, thus showing our gain from the program of over $10,000, which the district brought in revenue. Noting our deficit in our food service, we saw this as a potential tool to help offset some of that cost. We didn't reach our goal with, we anticipated that it might, but it ended up being a plus. As far as an administrative team, we see this as a program that we are eligible for this next year. We would recommend that we would continue with this, and we're looking at ways to increase the communication, the involvement, so even more students can participate. As the summer went on, it was neat to see how more and more students found their way to the school. When summer school wasn't in session, and I call that idle time, the numbers gradually increased during that time, so the word was getting out. A couple things we are looking at towards next year are looking at accessibility to the Fremont area. We can resource or include the Fremont area. I guess what comes along with it is an expense. You know, with the expense of taking the food down there and the staffing, we need to account for that expense and have it be part of this process. So we can potentially generate some additional revenue, but the expense could come along with it.
Can that be in a brown bag type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely, it can be. And working with daycares is an option, but we just have to count it as an expense to get the materials.
And there is another
to that.
daycare in Fremont.
What's that?
I'll just mention there's another daycare in
Sure.
Fremont.
The title of this
Double I.
feeding program is labeled by who?
The U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's, I know it's kind of a generic, it doesn't really.
Feeding, to me, I would call it a meals program rather than feeding
Yeah,
program.
you know, I've thought that, but that is how it is labeled in all the.
I didn't know if we labeled it or who else.
Nope, that's, I agree, it's kind of tacky.
Feeding, it sounds like.
I just didn't like feeding it. I don't know if we did
Sounds like
that.
cows and.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
I agree, but that's the technical name of the program.
There might, I mean, it might just be the thing where it could be dropped off, you know.
It could be.
I have to
Right.
see. I did talk to our licensing about it, and kids could come in and pick it up.
The one piece is the supervision of wherever the drop-off point is. You know, probably the best place would be at Fremont Elementary, you know, for the kids in that area. Obviously, we'd have to have some type of supervision monitoring that time window where that person would be there to do that, but
But if it's brown bag, they just pick it up.
they could pick it up, right?
And then whether the daycare was comfortable in having the rest of the students, older students, come pick it up and be,
Well, we couldn't
Something to
do it
talk
in our
about.
daycare, we'd have to do it in part of our church.
yeah.
It can't be the same facility, or the same room.
Just my final comment on the program. There's a number of people involved with this program this past year that helped with the supervision and the investigation that made it reality. And Brian and Cindy Billington and our summer school staff that helped some of the monitoring of the students when they came in during session. They did a commendable job during that process as well. So thank you to all those individuals that were part of it. That's all I have.
Any other questions on that one? Go to C, school accountability report card results.
Can I back up one, Joe, can I ask a question, I guess it's related to it. The student head count, you know, with, I don't know how to politically correctly phrase this, but with migrant workers or illegal aliens, it's whatever you want to call them, do they get to enroll in our school districts? How does that work for those kids?
Any student is eligible to enroll in our district, and that head count on the,
So how do you, I mean, that's allotted by the state or the federal government that even though
would
we
say.
know the number, is that privy to us, or is that going kinda?
Within our demographic breakdown, I don't know, I'm sure there's a minority or ethnicity breakdown of that.
Teens are the ones that are illegal.
Yeah, I had a parent
We don't
ask me
have
a
any way to
question
ask that.
on this, and then it'll ties in with the free lunch program. Are they entitled to the free lunch program also?
Any student through the age of 18, whether public or private, homeschool, is eligible for the summer feeding program. You don't have to be a member of our school committee to participate in that. And that's based on our current free reduced rate, the number of students that qualify for that relief. That's what created the eligibility for us to participate in that lunch and breakfast program.
Did Natalie do it?
Summer,
Summer meal feeding program.
we're not,
No, I don't think so, Brian.
No.
You don't have enough free and reduced lunch?
For my grandson would have done it, I'm sure.
And I,
And other neighboring districts, I guess, I don't know
The valley
if
does
we're
it.
unique to that.
Gresham, I've talked to Gresham, off the top of my head, I don't know if any of our neighboring districts participate in
I
that.
think the valley, the
I
valley.
know
Menasha does, right, yeah, Menasha was one that qualified, Green Bay, I believe was part of that as well. And what qualifies us to be eligible to this is that not this past year, but the prior year, we were at a free reduced rate of 50% or greater. And if you meet that threshold, that's what qualifies you for this program. And then whether you meet that threshold or not, for the next 5 years, you're eligible. I believe this last year, we were below that 50% mark, but we still were grandfathered in.
Once you're in for 5 years.
Correct.
That's your question.
Good question, Tony.
Yeah, but it's not gonna make it happen.
Okay.
Well, I don't think you ever, you don't ask for kids those.
That's federal, isn't it? You can't deny something. I think we just asked them.
It is what it is, and they don't have to agree with that.
Well, it goes back to taxes again. Sure.
Yeah, this isn't printed money. Somebody collected this money to give, somebody collected this money to give it away.
I think the board recognized that before, there is no true free lunch out there, that this comes through and is funded through, our school community and our country, and the federal government feels that it's a necessity or a program that they want to empower us to consider. And so how they choose to collect their funds is what they support, so, because we all pay for it.
Report card.
Okay, the school report card. Initially, tonight we were to have a discussion about our accountability scores at each of our 4 buildings. Last week I sent out that memo in the response from Michael Thompson, the deputy superintendent at the DPI, stating that everything's getting bumped back. This afternoon, we did receive our updated school accountability report cards. And tomorrow during our admin session on Tuesday, we'll be looking at that. But as far as the public release to the public and the media, that has now been pushed back until October 22nd. So that is also the day of our annual meeting. So my question for the board, is that something that you'd like to entertain on our October board meeting or at a later date? Or perhaps the November committee meeting for an update on that, knowing the schedule and the time frame of that night?
Weren't we gonna have a meeting and then we can go back to the meeting?
That's historically what's happened.
Right.
Could we do it, we can go back to the meeting? I don't wanna wait.
We can find out what it is.
Well, on the 22nd, I can communicate out to
I
board
don't want
members
Angie to tell me what it is.
as to where we are at. I mean, by all means, on the 22nd, the email's going out to everyone.
Oh, okay.
But if we want to formally discuss it as a district, those are our 2 options, the 22nd or the November committee
Well,
meeting.
then we might as well wait and see what the.
You'll go what everybody else
Yeah, give us
has
time
done
to
by
look at it.
November committee.
Can I ask you, because I noticed one of the reasons they gave us was pointing was that districts found errors in it. Did we find any errors in it?
We were not notified. In the letter, it said that some of the variables that gauge student growth were inaccurate, and some attendance records were inaccurate, and the closing the gap variable were inaccurate. So after going through that, the email that I received today, I believe they said around 90 school districts had their score increase, about 80 school districts had their score decrease, and the remaining stayed flat where they were.
So we didn't send in any
Districts that went,
changes.
districts that went down were to be notified by the DPI, and we did not receive that call. So I'm anticipating we're at where we were, or slightly higher.
What length of time do you think you would need in October or November?
Depending on how much detail you want to go into it. I mean, if we're content with knowing the number score in the 5 categories to rank and where we fit,
I guess I would suggest on the 22nd, we at least have the form explained to us,
Right.
but it'll be new.
Okay.
And limit the discussion and extend it to November, if that would make sense. So at least we understand the form as from an agenda item,
Sure.
not the full
Well,
blown
I assume after
explanation.
seeing it, we're gonna probably increase some goals.
Right, well, this will help us direct our future. One thing that I would like to include are our results in the annual meeting. So we talk about different markers or gauges of where the district's at. I plan on putting that information into the annual meeting. It's going to be very new to the vast majority, but I think it's warranted that as part of that meeting.
I would suggest both.
Okay.
Digest it and talk about it tomorrow.
Cliff note version on the 22nd. And a little
Answer
more
any
detail.
questions.
That
we
works for
may
me.
have.
Okay.
Even if it creates questions, it will have them for discussion. We're on D, Google updates.
Okay, at our last board meeting, we had called impromptu discussion on on Google and the platform at the district level and how it's currently working. Since then, we put a couple weeks under our belt and some updates, I guess, from my perspective, and I'd encourage the administrative team as well as people that utilize Google to give their input on it. One of the items that we addressed at that time was the timing out, where the screen would freeze and students were unable to word process or continue on with that. After that last meeting, it did continue, all right, for a period of time, and some steps and action steps that were taken to address that. Tony and the IT department contacted Wisnet. They're our provider for all of our internet services to see if something potentially was limiting this, why it wasn't working. And what they did some work on our filtering. They opened up the filtering. And it's not to say they're not secure, but they are. But they've ended up the accessibility or the ability for the filters to let material go to and from. And that has seemed to improve the frequency of the timing outs since they have made that. 100%, probably not, but an improvement, yes. Talking to a couple staff members, particularly Connie Peterson, I asked within her, because she's the one that was kind of a spokesperson that brought it forward early on, that it's significantly reduced if it does happen at all. And if it is 15 seconds or longer, she recommends the students to update their the document in which they're at, which takes them to, it's like going back to your document again, and you're able to access it and continue on. There have been a couple instances if it did lock up, the person's last sentence that they may have typed may not be there, depending on when the last time the automatic save was activated, but it has reduced that process. I'm checking my notes here from that, but that's a continual look at as to why that's happening, and we mentioned before that other districts are experiencing it, and that continues to be the question why and what can we do to improve it, but it has been improving. Since then, on another note, the Google and smart boards, there was an issue that raised with the connectivity amongst the Google platform and smart boards. There were some difficulties and some information moving back and forth from one platform to the other. Tony's investigating a process or a solution to that right now. I don't know, Kirk, if you had any insight, because that was primarily at the elementary level where they were trying to move back and forth.
I think he's got it figured out.
Okay. Okay, an application that limited it, all right. One of the other items that Mr. Wilbert commented on was the high school wireless and the connectivity with all the additions of our wireless access points. This last week, we have, not that this matters, but we have Cisco switches within our IT closets. and how they are configured. And with our new wireless access points, there was fine tuning that needed to take place between the wireless access points and our Cisco switches. That has drastically improved. There was one potential item with iPads and whether or not they were connected. And I walked down the hall today and one of our parapros was on an iPad and I said, "Are you connected right now?" And she said, "Well, yeah, I am." And so whether or not that continues to be, I know that you experienced some of that, Matt, at different times. Has there been an improvement or is that still one of the?
We're on.
You're on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when you go from place to place, sometimes it takes a minute to hook up to the next spot.
Access point?
Yeah.
Okay.
While you're looking at that, how much did it save our school district?
How much
Which is free cost?
Yeah.
Well, it's a platform. I mean, that's all it is. Instead of Microsoft Office.
Are we saving money though?
Are we saving money?
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to refer to Brian. Are we saving money on, we were up for a license renewal, I believe, for Microsoft Office.
Yes, we didn't upgrade our Microsoft Office, which would have been $20,000 to $40,000. So I guess initially we saved that amount as long as we stay with not upgrading Microsoft Office. Every couple of years we'll save that amount of money.
Okay, because I just got handed to me yesterday a whole bunch of complaints from students and some teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these areas you covered, but it's not covered yet.
Okay.
And they were, I mean, if you're, the system, do you want me to read the problems that the kids are having? I'm sure they've all come to you. I don't know if I want to make it a light to the board, all the problems that the kids are having and,
Sure.
and the rest of the teachers, but
Right.
So
it's
the
not
teachers-
really a savings at all, if you're asking me, and it's a serious complication
Mhm.
and a problem that, you know, for the kids, this is all the kids that's handed to me yesterday
Sure.
that they're having problems with. I don't like Google Docs because it didn't say the restart essay I did, so I lost it all. It's hard to use when I click to type. It starts typing somewhere else. And then they sent some examples of stuff too that, you know, that they're having problems with. When they did, when they're doing quotations marks from certain readings or whatever, there's the quotation marks aren't even coming through. They're coming through with these symbols. And they tried to correct it, and that wasn't working. And then they said the font is different, and they're having problems with the printing. And then one of the teachers gave me this and said this is what she wanted to print through Google Docs, and it comes out like this. So she's not getting what she wants, so there's a problem with that aspect. And then they got, some other kid was doing a project and typed in a certain font and wanted to do a quote from Bill Gates, and it come out all in this Arabic, or I don't know what this foreign language is. So then they did it again, and they had to run it through the internet, and then it came out again, but then this a symbol came up there again. And they said it wasn't working on that aspect either. This is some of the concerns that the teachers been having. Time it takes to help students download, convert documents from MS Office to Google Docs. And it says the students don't have internet and have many more steps to complete in order to take homework home. And then they have to work on it and then come back to re-upload the document. I noticed one of the other kids was saying in here, their flash drives. They can't store it on their flash drives. So how do the kids get to take their stuff home? I know my girls all had flash drives and they would download their stuff on the computers and then come home and do their homework. Well, there's, I think almost every kid had a complaint on that aspect. Formatting issues when uploading documents, often right before it's due, no time to make corrections. Time it takes to fix presentation to share with students. This one teacher said that it took 55 minutes to fix his preparation, where it only took like 5 minutes last year with the old program. Copy and pasting issues, I showed you those. The presentation quality has decreased, and it says another one was slower, the Google Docs than the MS Office. Students cannot crop or change pictures. Well, that's a big thing, especially with the art or any kind of project, going in and be able to work with that. You addressed the smart boards, but this just came in Thursday and it said it's still not working with the smart boards. Teachers are not using computers or labs like they used to. Teachers don't want the headache of Google Docs, therefore not having projects that they did in the past. Another one, teachers requesting students print because they can keep classes together for grading when they are shared, and then they're all in their inbox or shared folder, not separated for individual classes. And MS Office has a lot more features that students have been trained and educated to use, where this Google Docs is taking them a step backwards. And then the last comment, there is no publisher, brochures, formatting pictures and logos, etc. So that was, and then there's a whole bunch of complaints with the kids and everything. So I mean, when the kids, hand me this and the teachers are handing me this, I think the system needs to be a huge correction or failure, throw it out and go back what the kids were doing. I mean, you're limiting them. I thought that was our goal, to let the kids be more expressive and more creative and be able to use tools to become better in the computer world, and it seems like this docs is just setting them back 2 or 3 steps, so it's not a benefit, is what I'm seeing right here. So if you want to address that.
Mr. Byer, can I ask you, teachers send you letters? You ask
Yes.
them to, or?
No, I didn't. And why are you going on that issue of where the information come from?
I will
You're
tell you why.
acting like I am doing something wrong or illegal here.
I am asking, because
Well, let's hear it.
why didn't those teachers go to their principal, or did they?
They have in the past. They already made that comment.
Well, we'll talk about that when we go to the full session.
Yes, we will.
I know a couple people in that one. They're having the same issue. They don't like it either. Staff there. And they're basically having the same issues. And I've had parents come to and I basically, it's little stuff. They reset their password, they can't get logged in, it's slower, doesn't have spell check. You probably know. The Wi-Fi, we were told that last time, it wasn't working when we figured it out. So basically,
Is the savings worth if it's student learning?
I think, I don't know if this was researched enough when we did it, and I think we're getting blamed.
I don't think
Wow.
blaming isn't, I don't think anybody needs to be blamed.
Well, no, I'm not, but I mean, I think, because it's our
I'm
responsibility.
getting reports back that school's not working, and why does the board do that?
Okay. As far as, Tony, you point out an important issue, and that's the education piece of this, because it is new for kids. Whereas, let's say Microsoft Office, probably even in the elementary age, that's what they learn. And then when they teach at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, that's the primary platform that's used. Talking to Connie Peterson, she said the best students that know the most about the Google platform are my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, because she's able to give that instruction to them at that level, where eventually, hypothetically speaking, that's all they're going to know as they go forward. Our upperclassmen, our juniors, seniors, they've been engaged in Microsoft Office for the past however many years they've been here, in knowing a new system for some pick up on it quickly, some don't pick up on it at all, some don't want to learn. Some of the same obstacles that we all face when we start something new. What is in place to help address some of those? I don't know if it's happening this week, Matt, or is it next week that Tony and Becca are in the classrooms, I believe, working with the English departments to talk about, is it this week?
Yep.
Some of those things that you talked about, whether that's all the solutions to put out there, probably not.
Yeah.
But it's going to give them that education piece, hopefully, to make them.
Oh, I'm all for change, and if we put a new program in and it's going to be better, that's great. But if it's not allowing the kids to do stuff that they had in the past that they're required to do or want to do, and if the option isn't there, it's failing. It's not meeting
May
its
I ask
requirements.
the question, Matt?
Yeah.
They're not able to take their homework home, or as he said, on a flash drive, or once a day?
Well, one of the parts of Google is that you don't have to put it on a flash drive because
You can bring it up at
it's
home?
web-based. So as As far as transferring the information over, that is a plus on that one.
Because you can go home and bring it up, bring
Exactly.
up something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think that's the issue.
Is that the problem? It doesn't work.
Sometimes it doesn't work.
But you can bring it up.
If it worked,
It worked out slick for my son who broke his leg and has been at home. He had all his assignments on Google Docs. His teacher sent him stuff through Google Docs. It worked very well in that case. I know just one. that was there.
But I meant the flash drive issue shouldn't be an issue because they should be able to bring it up at home, right? That's what I'm asking. They can access it when it works.
The answer is
When it
yes.
works.
Yes.
I think it
Is
doesn't
there-
always work.
So you don't need.
Is there a consideration to slow down the cold turkey transfer and say, let's do both until we get on board? Is that?
I think that's a definite option, you know, and as far as the staff, all staff have the Microsoft Office platform on their computers. You know, if the staff member
I
has.
thought the renew or upgrade hadn't been done. or
No, it hasn't been done, but all of our
That
staff.
renew or would that need to be done to do a slower change instead of cold turkey and say,
Is it
well,
most-
Google or
07, I believe we have right now, Microsoft 07, and
is that
everybody,
expired? Is that?
No, it's
bad,
ours.
Or just doesn't get updated?
it's ours, it's just not updated, every year, there's another year, and we've typically gone, 3 to 5 years, and then we'd update that
So it
platform.
would work at the 07 level,
It
no
will-
updates needed?
It will work, but there won't be any, there's new updates, Microsoft Office comes up with new updates to Microsoft.
But it'd be the same as last year?
It would be, correct.
And is that
I don't know
all
the
you-
answer to this, but it doesn't, all I hear is complaints.
Is that on all your machines yet? Like, would you be able to work on Word 7 in your office?
It's not in the computer lab.
It's not in the computer lab, it's correct. Where students have accessibility, it's not currently loaded onto those computers.
The new computers don't have Office 7.
Correct.
This is all on Google Chrome, right?
Correct.
And what's gonna happen next year when it goes away on November the 1st? I saw it on the computer this week.
Google Chrome?
Google Chrome is going away November 1st of next year. Didn't say what's replacing it, it just said it was
Okay.
going away.
I don't have an answer, yeah, just to that.
I'd like to tell you, but I don't know
Yeah,
myself.
sure.
Suggestions, options, solutions.
I guess my comment is if, only have to have a board teacher how to use it during the class time, not get their classwork, instructions and then
Do we gotta buy upgrades for the system? It's Google Docs?
We could if we chose to. In the future, IP address, phone service type stuff, those potentially could be upgrades to that if we chose to update that piece with that.
And those would be upgrades that we were looking at anyway, since the phone system software is so old and we're looking more to a cloud-based environment.
Well, I guess if we have a cost to upgrade a system that isn't working or taking time to work, why are we spending money or going that route? The other system was meeting our needs. And the kids were comfortable using it.
So what motivated the change? Savings?
Potential cost savings, flexibility amongst students, at home versus here. Student doesn't have Microsoft Office, but they have the internet at home. They can access their documents in that environment. Office is fairly common, but it's not a guarantee. With a web-based product and process, it's a reality, it can happen.
There's also a huge collaboration piece too, that if an instructor assigns assignment to 5 kids to work on one project, they can all be working on it at home on the same document and see all the changes as they're coming out. So they can work on one project together at the same time, adding input and whatnot, where we didn't have that capability before.
I think just to support that comment, Brian, today I received an email from CISA 6, and it was a Google document, and they were looking for information from our districts on subpay and I opened it up, and it had all 42 districts in our CISA, and only 4 or 5 of them were filled in. I clicked on the Weyauwega-Fremont, put in $85, hit update, went back to the email, boom, now we're in there. So the next person that opens it up knows what Weyauwega-Fremont says. I think that's just a collaboration. And that's just one of the, options that are out there, I guess, for that.
Can I just say something, brief comment? Two things. One of them is iGoogle is what is going to be retired in November of 2013, which is basically the cloud option, I believe, not Google Chrome
I
itself.
read that too.
The other thing is, our board meeting started at 6:30. For the better part of the board meeting, I've been trying to change and upload a PowerPoint that I had so my students can work on it in Google Chrome. So there is definitely a lot more time that I'm spending as a teacher. The nice part of it is just what Brian was saying, is that now they're going to be working on this template and they'll be able to work and share it together. So, there are definitely benefits, but that's 2 hours time practically that I don't normally have. So I'm kind of sitting here multitasking and I'm able to get that done. So, yes, there are benefits to it, but there are also there's that time component. With my current software that I'm using or my certain products that I'm using, I now have to change and update. And for me to do that with every one of my classes, I have 4 different preps that I prepare for. It's not possible. So it would be nice if the students had, I know we talked in our leadership team meeting, of maybe having an opportunity where the students can at least have access to Word in the high school computer lab or something like that. So they can go from flash drive to Word at home if they don't have internet. Because I think we're going under the basis that there's so many kids that have internet. There's a lot of my students that don't even have computers. So we're not servicing the entire population when it comes to that. First of all.
And they are able to download the documents from Chrome, put it onto a flash drive, take it home, come here, and upload it back into Google Docs.
Did this happen because there's like 7 kids that all said it doesn't work?
But they have to have Google
They just
Docs.
haven't been trained on it. It's always been a functionality. I take documents all the time from my drive and put them on my computers at both places.
But you have to have Google Doc at home then.
No, you can download it as a Word document and then work on it there. They'll convert it to a Word document and you can use it there. It would work. Yeah.
Stay the course and listen to the complaints, or change the course? That's the question.
Would you actually have to buy Word 7?
We own that. We have it.
So you could put them on the ones in the
We could put it back on the
labs?
on the labs, if that's the direction we want.
It's not a direction I'm ordering you to do, I'm
Right,
just
but I'm saying
saying.
that's a realistic thing that could happen with that. I guess some of the comments that Adrian make on the positives that Google does bring to that process, I think we'd be missing the boat if we don't use some of those collectively as a district, as a staff, to communicate with our kids, outside of the classroom. So if it's a melding of both, potentially.
One more thing too is, it's October 8th. And we have tech meetings once a month, Tuesday morning. Tomorrow morning, we're gonna have another one where some concerns are gonna be brought up that I've compiled, leadership team has compiled, and we're gonna bring them to the technology meeting, which I do think will offer some solutions to some of this. It's October 8th. I don't think it's fair to take this much criticism on October 8th. We're a month and a week in, and we're addressing the issues that come by. I think we need some more time yet, so that's my 2 cents.
Why didn't we do both? So this wouldn't have been a discussion.
Yeah.
Instead of cold turkey, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna hammer out the problems in the future.
This should have been done when the kids started school.
It's
All
affecting
these-
children's education
All this stuff that's coming up now it's affecting the kids.
and staff.
So to say it's too late, you had this, 5-6 months of this, and you can't figure out the problems?
If we had all these concerns that we have,
didn't you know this was going, didn't you know this was gonna happen when you got the thing? Required this? That's my whole, didn't you research anything or think about anything to make sure it's all gonna work? That's my whole. 5 months later, it's not working.
Well, in that 5 months, as far as training opportunities that we've had out there, it's on the sheet in front of you, 13 opportunities, and we're talking solely for staff to become better knowledgeable of what and how to use the different avenues out there. I know, Matt, you probably had the most recent staff training. What was the interest from staff to know more about that type of, from the Google updates and whatnot?
In the morning session, we had 7, and then 8, and in the afternoon session, we had 4.
Okay, and then I know we had a Saturday training that was